and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. My guest today, Tami for Miami, is kind of how she positions herself. Tami Reiss. She's an executive coach, leadership coach in particular. And I first met Tami about a week ago, and that will not in any way, shape, or form date this interview because you will not have any idea what week I'm talking about. But it was on an office hours program that we were doing. Live stream on LinkedIn. And I was just really intrigued about her take on leadership and actually how she approached the whole conversation about, leadership presence, about collaboration, about, just kind of how leaders actually facilitate movement, in organizations and in life. And that short form interview was only about 10 minutes long, and I could not resist the opportunity to have her on this show because I wanted to have a much deeper conversation, because I got a hunch there's going to be some jewels that emerge out of this conversation that you as a listener are going to be able to really take advantage of. And me as a host here, I'm going to be able to learn something as well. I got a hunch. I hope. That's kind of my plan.
So first of all, I'm so excited to continue our conversation because 10 minutes was definitely not enough for you and I.
It wasn't.
And it's so much fun to be here within a week, just continuing our conversation. But I do hope that we get your listeners some gems. I really believe in producing actionable advice, not just theoretical frameworks. Mm-hmm. And so very often I'll say this, not that. Try this, do this. Like, I am all about giving you advice because if you're listening to something, you're looking for an answer you don't already have. So I want to help you get there.
Perfect. Well, that's going to be exactly what we end up pulling out of here. I'm going to just start with a question, Tami, and it's one that I will oftentimes use just to set the stage for some things here. When you hear the term, and this is the Soul of Business podcast, so when you hear the term the Soul of Business, what does that bring up for you, just in terms of your experience and your thinking?
So many things. First of all, just the basic idea that businesses are a collection of humans, right? We are a collection of humans that all hopefully are serving a common goal.
And big word,
hopefully. There are different, roles and responsibilities and levels of those humans, but each of them has person needs, like needs as a person. And those need to be addressed by the business, or those people will leave, or they will stay and they will quiet quit, or they will stay forever and just do mediocre work. And there are lots of people who talk about psychological safety and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And that's what I talk about when I'm talking about how do you empower your team. But from a fundamental perspective, leadership in business needs to think about what encourages people to invest their time, to invest their soul in this. And it's because their soul feels good about it at the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. And that has to do with, are we setting a clear vision? Do we have a clear mission? Do we have a clear sense of the population of other humans out there that this group of humans is here to serve? And when those things happen, magic
happens. And you're starting to speak to something here that I've always been fascinated by. I've been doing this work for about 45 years, and my mom would ask me real early on, "What is it you do again? Are you a motivational speaker?" And because I do a lot of stage work and have done that for years. But I say, "Mom, no, not motivation. And here's where I'm going with this. There's a distinction, a very specific distinction, and this has to do with leadership, between motivation and inspiration. Very clear distinction between those two. Motivation is an externally driven, carrot and stick sort of an approach, and it's almost always linked into a hierarchy of command and control. I'm the boss. I'm going to set the goal. I'm going to set the objective. I'm going to entice you to come along with me on this. Here's the carrot or here's the stick. Inspiration's something else. And this is what you started speaking to was, how do I get emotional engagement? How do I tap into something inside somebody that they go, ooh, I can't not have that. That's a nice shiny object. I want to actually go play with that one for a while. In the work you do with your clients, how do you actually parse that distinction and then go about actually working with your clients as a leadership coach to begin to look at ways that they inspire, because there's a number of different modalities that come into play there.
So what we're really trying to do in general is inspire action, inspire motion. Years ago, I was lucky enough to be one of the first testers of the Vital Smarts course Influencer. So Vital Smarts, for those who are unfamiliar, they created the course Crucial Conversations and Crucial Confrontations, big corporate training. They have another, like their third thing was Influencer. And this launched 15 or so years ago. So I'm sure a number of your listeners have been through that training. And a friend of mine is one of their master trainers. So I got to be a beta tester. And they have this 6-box grid that has to do with motivation and ability. And those are the two columns, motivation and ability, and then individual, social, and structural. So there's individual ability, individual motivations, social ability, social motivation, structural ability, structural motivation. And what you were talking about very strongly fits into the structural ability and motivation, right? Am I providing the tools that someone can do their job? And am I providing structural motivation, incentive systems, gold star systems, et cetera, that help them be motivated? I try to get to the individual and social level.
Yeah.
Because as a leader, you have to understand, what are the individual's motivations? What are they trying to do in their lives that you can potentially redirect towards your stuff? That's really where influence comes in.
Mm-hmm.
What can you do to create social structures where other people are helping motivate? That's social pressure, right? We've all fallen under social pressure. And we know the power of teamwork, where when a team stays up all night working on a problem, the team is all there, that there's constructs that happen with these groups of humans we've created in our organizations. And that's what organizational design is about and what team topography is about. It's how can you create social structure within a business that creates innovation, that creates performance, that creates action. But at the same point, as a leader, you have to think about each of the individuals, especially the ones that report to you. And you have to think about, do they have the ability to do what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm.
If not, is there a training? Is there a tool I need to provide them? Then, is there a motivation? Once I've gotten rid of all the things that are the ability issues, there's no stumbling block in front of them. What's stopping them? That becomes a motivation. And that only comes from building empathy for them and what drives them.
Yeah. Yeah, the way that I've ended up defining leadership, and after 40 some odd years, I tried a number of different definitions. But the one that I've landed on and the one that I'm leveraging most effectively today has 4 components to it. Influencing others, which takes command and control out of the conversation. It's a state of being. It's, how do I show up? When I enter the room, I'm causing movement. Before I ever open my mouth. So there's that influencing piece has to do with state of being, presence. We'll talk about that. Co-creating. This is where, the use of vision is poorly understood, I think, in most organizations.
So poorly
There's a lot of time spent on wordsmithing. And what's important about vision, somebody told me this years and years ago, I think it was Kenny Blanchard, said that, it's not important what the vision is, it's important what the vision does. And that dynamic has to do with the notion of co-creation. If I've got something in place here that is an aspirational objective, there's an aspiration out there that taps into my spirit, that's meaningful to me. Now ownership is transferred. It's not just the leader's position. And then the third element here had to do with coordinated movement, because we're going to be moving into unknown territory. So how do we're going to step on each other's toes. It's almost guaranteed we're going to step on each other's toes. And we want to learn how to do this well. So I came across this quote from a philosopher, Karl Popper, and he was talking about this in the scientific domain. But he said basically the growth of knowledge depends entirely upon disagreement. The growth of knowledge depends entirely on disagreement.
If everyone agreed, we'd get nowhere.
We get nowhere. So healthy conflict, is part and parcel of coordinated movement. And then the last element, and this is the one that really is the one that has the golden ring in it, I suppose you could say. It's in pursuit of a worthy ideal.
Mhm.
A worthy ideal. We're going to, increase revenue from 3 million to 5 million this year.
Not
For
a
the
worthy
sake
idea.
of what? What's the worthy ideal that's embedded in that? Because if I've got somebody on the plant floor that's moving pallets, from point A to point B,
How does that
increase.
contribute?
Yeah, there's no worthy ideal there. I mean, I get to move more pallets. Oh, yay! I'm so excited. Uh, what's in it for me? So, influencing others in order to co-create coordinated movement in pursuit of a worthy ideal.
I
With
like the
that
way you did the
definition,
full sentence.
yeah, yeah. It's so yeah, I've played around with this a lot. So yeah, just your take on those four elements. I mean, if I was to simplify it, where do we go with this from a leadership development perspective?
So, as you know, I'm very action oriented.
Yep,
So, I
absolutely.
have a similar framework that as you were reading them, I was like, yep, those are all there. And then I've got a few additional ones that
Yep.
all start with an action word. And so they
Yeah,
are
lead
the
your
acronym
lead profile. Yeah,
LEAD,
LEAD.
right?
That's what that's
LEAD.
where I was leading
And
this.
so lead is look towards the future. And that is around creating a vision. The importance, it's number one for a reason. Like you have to create a vision. And to me, a vision is a picture that ends up in everyone's heads. It's the story we tell about the future, which is better than where we are right now. And leaders challenge the status quo and they say, what's going on right here is not good enough. There's a better option. There's a more ideal option out there. And we need to be taking steps to get there.
Hmm.
And that's really how you get people on board and followers. That's step one, that you have to be guiding them to something, that they're going towards something, towards this ideal. And so that's step one, looking towards a future world which is better than where we are today. Number two, close to your number two, empower
Yeah,
your teams. And that has to do with creating the support structure, equipping them with the tools they need, giving them the confidence and motivation they need as individuals and groups that will help them collaborate and co create towards that ideal, right? And knowing that you're going to have many different levels of the same thing, but they need to learn how to resolve conflicts within their own sphere
yeah,
and cross functionally. And a lot of that stuff can be settled when there is a clear vision that everyone's marching towards if leaders take a step back. Because
yeah,
when leaders try to settle those issues themselves, you're not actually empowering your team to do it.
exactly. See,
And
and
so,
and yeah, that's an interesting point there because yeah, you mentioned the word resolve the conflict. Just kind of the work. I mean, the more and more that I play with this, when I rub my hands together, it creates heat.
friction,
Yeah,
heat.
friction. Yeah, heat cleans things, and it also enough heat will create light, so
Yeah.
illumination. So moving people away, particularly leaders, moving them away from the notion that I need to resolve the conflict towards a question about how do I use this conflict effectively to move us where we'd like to go. So that conflict is going to be there. It can't. I mean,
Yeah.
if I don't have conflict, I'm dead in the water. I
It
really am
means that
because there's no
people
friction.
aren't thinking critically. Like
I need friction to move.
if there's no conflict, if there's no friction, if there's no disagreement, it means people aren't actually using their brains.
Right.
You want them to use their brains because you want them to challenge the status quo and you want them to be thinking about what's the fastest way to get to this future
Yeah.
ideal state.
Yep.
And that is a matter of allowing for conflict, healthy conflict. I have a client who says, I believe in disagreeing without being disagreeable.
Agreeable.
And that gets into culture.
Yeah.
How do you create a culture where you can have mutual respect and disagree?
Perfect. Yeah.
I
That's
love that. When you said that to me, I was like, that is fantastic. Because the problem with disagreement isn't that you're having a conflict of ideas. It's when you start making it a personal attack and you
yeah.
stop respecting the other side as a reasonable being.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we each inhabit a world that is unique to us. And we see things in different ways. And I want to know how you see things because you're seeing stuff that I'm not seeing. You're noticing things that
Yeah.
I'm not noticing.
And
Um,
that's one of the best questions leaders can ask. You've got an idea and you go to your team and say, tell me what I'm missing.
Yeah.
Tell me what I'm
Spot on.
not seeing here.
Yeah.
Open-ended question, strong feedback, shows that you've got humility and that you're open to ideas, right? That you
Yep.
don't think you're perfect and you don't expect anyone on your team to think they're perfect either.
Which requires vulnerability. Vulnerability. And
Okay, you're gonna go Brene Brown on me now?
we're going to go right there. But yeah, but when we're talking about leadership presence, yeah, yeah, an old mentor of mine years ago said, Blaine, people people connect with other people through vulnerability. And and at that point in time, and this goes back a bunch of years, I was
Yeah.
in the, we were doing encounter group, I mean,
Mhm.
very intense, 24-hour a day sessions for 4 days. I mean, these were intense psychological, all kinds of great fun, but
Yeah.
very intense.
Very
People connect through
intense.
vulnerability. And then I started amending that and playing with it a little bit. And I realized that people disconnect through certainty.
Mm, interesting.
We connect through vulnerability and we disconnect through certainty. And I think one of the greatest fallacies that leaders actually wrestle with is I need to have the answer. I need to show up. Don't let them see me sweat. I mean, all of those aphorisms come into play here, and there's no place for people to connect.
So interestingly, where my brain is jumping is to the fourth letter, which is D. Well,
Yes.
A
I
is
wanted to make
activate
sure
your
I
supporters,
wanted to
which
make
is
sure we didn't miss A in here too.
A is activate your supporters, which is how do you navigate internal politics to gain momentum to
Uh-huh.
get more people following. So that one's an easy one, theoretically. Actually, really hard to do and is the core of influence, but we're just going to gloss over all that right now to get to D, which is deciding sensibly and swiftly. Because nobody likes an indecisive leader and nobody likes a dictatorial leader who isn't going to express their thought process.
Yeah.
So I learned around a year ago, and this was one of those like moments, that the word decide, do you know the etymology of the word decide, Blaine?
I did at one point in time, but that goes back a long time. I did do some research on that, but
So
go ahead.
it ends in side, like herbicide or pesticide.
Oversight.
So it has to kill something.
Yes.
And what it's killing is ambiguity and uncertainty. Because once you make a decision, you have clarity of where you're headed. But to me, when we get to this deciding sensibly thing, what a leader's responsibility is to actually explain their thought process.
Yeah.
Explain how they considered the trade offs, that nothing is willy nilly, that there are downstream impacts, but that it's still their responsibility to make a choice. And that choice, if expressed correctly, with that thought process about the trade offs and what they thought was most important about the vision, etc., that in fact empowers people to
Yeah.
do the same thing on their own level and resolve that disagreement on their own level because they now have a paradigm for how the leader weighed the different options
Yeah.
but still move forward because indecisiveness, like the billions of dollars that are lost every year on indecisiveness,
Oh
like
boy.
85% of software deals end in no decision, like we're just not going to buy anything
Mm-hmm.
because it was too hard for us to choose.
Yeah.
How is that productive? Like it's
Yeah.
literally the antithesis of moving forward, right? You're just
Yeah.
like,
A
oh,
confused
we're
mind
gonna be
will not
okay
make
the
a
way we
decision.
are.
Yeah. Confused mind won't make a decision. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks. The idea here of this whole decision-making process. I love the way that you describe this, and I've got to go back and take a look at the etymology on this thing. But the idea of when we're addressing a problem, we'll get together, people, and we'll have a discussion about it. And when you start,
Brainstorm.
oh, the root of the word discussion is the same as the word percussion and concussion.
Tell me
And
more.
well, percussion is the sound that's made when something's struck, and
Okay.
concussion is the consequence of being struck. So
Okay.
most discussions are organized around the principle of I want to win, and whoever throws hardest is the winner. So my point of view has energy behind it. I will throw my point of view. I will land my point of view
I
as
talk about this.
loudly
Now I
and
have something else to talk about
there
around
we
this
go.
topic.
Which is
Because
different. All of this is different than a dialogue. I mean, you take the word dialogue apart, dialogos, around ideas, explore ideas. So it's a completely different paradigm.
Blaine, I love this so much because when I talk about the 3 steps to influence, number 1 is knowing where you want to go,
Yep.
having a vision. Number 2 is understanding where someone else wants to go, right? Building empathy. But number 3 is aligning those 2 visions, but aligning the 2 people. And the key to doing that is to ask questions and not make
Yeah.
statements. And I tell people that if you make a statement, it's always going to be met with opposition.
Yep.
But if you ask a question, you're opening to dialogue.
Yeah.
And then the other person has the opportunity to express their ideas
Mm-hmm.
on the topic, which may or may not be in perfect alignment with yours, but you can
Probably won't
help
be.
direct it through more questions
Yeah. So tell
that
me more
allow.
about that. Tell me more.
What do you want to know more about? I mean, you've done it, right? Like, you know this works, right?
No,
It's a sales
I
tactic. It's
I
consultative
was
sales.
demonstrating here. Yeah.
Yeah, tell me more, right?
Yeah. You lean in.
Like, tell me how this is. Tell me what you think the impact of this is going to be.
Yeah.
Walk
If
me
we
through the
did this
steps.
well, what would be in it for you? If we did this well, what would that
Yeah.
make possible that you wouldn't get to have, do, or be if we didn't do this?
Walk me through the downstream impacts of going
Yeah.
this route versus another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me
You know
what
how this
happens.
won't work. Tell me how you think it won't work. And let's
Yeah,
see what we can do about that. Yeah,
because that's a dialogue.
exactly.
Okay, I need to switch topics for a second, only because there's just like a great like do this
Please.
thing. So years ago, I created a Chrome plugin called Just Not Sorry, which underlines in either Microsoft Office 365 or Gmail when you write words that undermine your confidence, such as just, sorry, I think, I believe, trying, etc. But the one that it underlines that is actually my verbal tick is, does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
Which is a question.
Yeah.
But it's a closed question. It's a yes, no question. But when you say, does that make sense? It communicates, I don't have confidence in what I just said being logical and reasonable. So, or sensible, right? So that's not what you want to communicate to the person who's receiving your idea. But
Good.
instead, if you say, what can I clarify about that? You're opening for dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
You're opening the opportunity. I normally say opening for discussion, but I'm not going to say that anymore because I've learned. you're opening for dialogue and you're saying, I might have expressed ideas that you're still hammering on.
Yep.
And they now need to fit into your mental model. And I want to help you do that. So tell me where there's an issue and we'll work together
We'll work
on
together.
it.
Yeah. Now,
And this is how
you're
collaboration is about. And
that's where the
co-creation.
collaboration comes in now, which is that's the word I want to focus on here is collaboration. Most adults have learned to communicate by accident. I mean, truly, this is how we learn to communicate. We come out of the womb and we start paying attention. We start hearing things. We start associating sounds with actions, sounds with something that happens, and all of a sudden now we have a vocabulary, and we start stitching things together, and all of a sudden we've got a language, and so this is kind of how we end up learning. Now, where I'm going with this is that children are fascinating communicators. They are question machines. They,
Yeah.
they are just question
And
machines.
parents who
And,
don't want to answer their questions are missing out on opportunities.
oh, absolutely. And you've written a book here that I want to talk a little bit about because it's a way of, people work in patterned ways. And this is the whole point about how we learn language. We learn languages by recognizing patterns. When I say mama, all of a sudden mom appears and there's all this kind of stuff happens. You've written a children's book that I think is just fascinating, and it has to do with the nature of collaboration. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the net of it.
So if people could see me
Training
typing,
kids
trying
how
to
to
find the
actually,
transcript.
yeah. So these kids are going to be coming into a workforce with a skill set that most adults today don't possess, which has to do with an intentional framing of how do we collaborate here and what's the consequence of that. So talk
Right.
a little bit about the book. First of all, the title of it, and then where people can find it. It's a rhyming book.
It's a rhyming book called
Yeah.
What Do Product Managers Do? A primer for aspiring PMs of all ages and parents who aren't sure it's a real job. Glad you giggled. And what I was trying to look up was the actual precise text on this, because it's 34 pages long of stanzas. But there's a line that says, the key to this process is collaboration. Still don't quite get it. Here's my elaboration. And then she talks about all the different people. Sue is our product manager. She's the protagonist of our story. And she talks about how she collaborates with engineering and design and QA and sales and marketing, etc., to put something into the world. And when you think about a lot of the changes that are going on in the education system right now, there's a lot more project-based work that a lot of people are talking about, because they recognize that in the real world, in the business world, we don't operate by ourselves. We collaborate with other people. And therefore, if you think about it, a project is a collaboration towards an end goal of whatever the result of that project is.
That is the singular business activity.
Right. And so what you're simulating is understanding different people's strengths so that they can leverage that for the common good of the group that is working on this project. Figuring out who's going to be leading, who's going to be making the tough calls, the hard decisions of what's in and what's out. Is that going to be consensus driven? Is that going to be individual? Right? There's all these different things that they're learning the social contracts around. And this book shows you that you're going to do that as an adult too, right? That like, as an adult, most of us are working on a product of some kind. Right? And it could be a game or an app or software or this dress I'm wearing. This dress is a product too. And when we're building that, we're building it with a group of people towards a higher purpose.
For a higher purpose. Yeah.
And I mean, there's a line about
sandbox, and we do it in a business.
Yeah. And as the book says, like, some will learn this stuff in business school, but other paths work and are equally cool. You don't have to go get your MBA to become a successful entrepreneur, a successful business owner, a successful product manager, a successful leader with an organization. What you need to do is work on your leadership skills. You need to work on your influence skills. You need to work on your building empathy skills. You need to work on your ability to be vulnerable so that other people can meet you.
Perfect. We're going to have to close there. This has been a fast 30 minutes.
Oh my God, we're done?
Yeah, we're done. We're not done. We're not done.
I thought this was our break time.
I'm going to have you back on another show here. Where can people find out about you and what you're up to? What's you've got a LinkedIn profile. I know people can find you there.
Easiest way is TamiReiss.com or me on LinkedIn, as long as you spell it correctly, Tami, spelled like Miami, and Reiss is REISS. But if you type in like Tami Reiss, motivational speaker, I don't know if that works, but probably like leadership coach or executive coach, product leader coach. If you find Tami Reiss, the WNBA coach, you're going down the wrong route. She spells it with 2 M's, and that's not me.
That's good to know. Yeah. You're too short for that.
I mean, I'm 5'9". I'm not too short to be a WNBA coach, but and she also has like a curly-ish blonde thing going on, but we are definitely 2 different people.
Okay. Good to know. TamiReiss.com, TamiReiss.com. Tami, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you for making the time to have a longer conversation with me. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm so glad we were able to make it happen. This was so much fun. You couldn't tell by my enthusiasm.
Well, it's that kind of comes with the package. I got a hunch.
It does. It does. And this is uncaffeinated, to be clear.
You're not. This is the uncaffeinated version. Okay. Whoops. It's a good thing you don't live in Seattle.
Oh my God. If I lived in Seattle, I'd be like jittery at all times.
That's great. Folks, you've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett, my guest today, Tami Reiss. as always in your life, find a way to be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation. Nature is probably my greatest teacher. And one thing that I know for sure and for certain is that in nature, nothing serves exclusively as a center of accumulation. Everything in nature, in some way, shape, or form, is a center of distribution. Find ways to give things away, whether it's a smile, whether it's a hug, make a contribution someplace to a charity that you value. Centers of distribution make the world go round. You're a part of nature, act like it. And I'll see you on the next show. Take care.